There is a 16-year-old Brazilian wonderkid who has barely kicked a ball in senior football, but Europe is already fighting over him. Palmeiras slapped a €100 million release clause on Eduardo Conceição when he recently signed his first professional contract. Newcastle had a £21.5 million bid rejected. Manchester City are pushing hard. Now Man United are trying to force their way into this race. Barcelona, Chelsea, PSG, Real Madrid are all watching closely. And yes, the race is heating up. But Manchester United still have a genuine chance, because reports suggest a deal could be done closer to £34 million. But this is where it gets interesting, because under Ineos, United have already shocked everyone in this market when they signed Aiden Heaven from Arsenal for just £1 million, £18 million for Senna Lamens. Not to forget Sekou Kone, £1.25 million, and Cristiano Orozco, £750,000. Different profiles, different prices, different stages of development. But the idea is clear. Buy talent earlier, develop it better. Stop waiting until the whole of Europe already knows the player is special. And with Christopher Vivell involved, that direction is very clear. Buy before the explosion. Develop before the hype becomes impossible to afford. But Eduardo Conceição is different. This is not a quiet academy gamble. This is a real bidding war for a Brazilian wonderkid everyone wants. But there is a twist. Eduardo can only join in January 2028, after he turns 18 on 7th of December 2027. That is where excitement has to meet discipline, because there is a difference between buying potential early and overpaying for potential early. And United fans, we know how dangerous that line can be. We have seen this movie before. The Brazilian comparisons, the highlight clips, the fear of missing out, the pressure to move before City or Barcelona get there first. So the question is not simply, is Eduardo Conceição special? The real question is this the kind of brave early move United must make to compete for the stars of tomorrow? Or is £34 million for a 16-year-old who cannot arrive until 2028? The moment where smart scouting starts turning into expensive temptation. So what have Europe's biggest clubs actually seen? Because at this age, hype is cheap. Every year, there is a new name, a new teenager being called the next someone. But with Eduardo Conceição, the interest is not just built on vibes. There is something in the profile that makes scouts lean forward. He is not just a winger who hugs the touchline and waits for the ball. He is a right-footed left winger who wants to come alive in the dangerous spaces. He can stay wide and isolate a fullback. He can drift inside like a number 10. He can receive between the lines. He can play closer to the striker. And that is where the excitement starts. Because the best young attackers are not always the ones with the loudest highlight reels. Sometimes, they are the ones who already understand where the next danger is going to appear. Eduardo does not just run at defenders for the sake of it. He seems to wait for the defender to lean one way, then attacks the space they have just opened. That is the difference between a player with tricks and a player with timing. And when you look at his youth numbers, you start to understand why the big clubs are circling. 4 goals and 3 assists in 7 Copinha games. Brazil under-17 involvement. A Palmeiras academy product, wearing the kind of pressure most 16-year-olds are not built to carry. But here is the part I find most interesting. It is not just the dribbling. It is not just the goals. It is not just the Brazilian flair. It is the way he seems comfortable becoming different things in the same attack. One moment he looks like a winger, then he drifts inside and looks like a playmaker. Then he attacks the box and looks like a second striker. That is why this profile is dangerous. Because defenders like clarity. They want to know what kind of problem they are facing. With Eduardo Conceição, the problem keeps changing. And that is exactly why Palmeiras matters so much in this story. Because clubs are not just scouting Eduardo Conceição. They are scouting the factory. This is the same Palmeiras pipeline that has already produced Endrick, Estevão, and Luis Guilherme. So when another teenage attacker starts making noise inside that system, Europe does not wait politely anymore. They move early, because nobody wants to be the club that watched the next Palmeiras duel from a distance, waited for senior football, waited for confirmation, waited for the price to make sense, and then realized they were already 2 years too late. That is the game now. You do not buy the finished superstar. You buy the signs before the superstar becomes obvious, and Palmeiras know that. That is why the release clause is so high. That is why the asking price is serious. That is why Newcastle tested the water. That is why City are pushing. That is why Barcelona are still hanging around, even with their financial problems. And that is why United cannot just sit back and admire him from a safe distance. Because in this market, hesitation can cost you a generational talent, but panic can cost you the plan. And for Manchester United, that is where this story becomes more than just a transfer race. It becomes a test of the new model. Because for United, the question is not just whether they can win the race. The question is whether they can build the pathway. And that matters more than the fee. £34 million for a 16-year-old is not just a transfer fee. It is pressure. It is expectation. It is headlines before he even arrives. It is fans watching every clip, every youth tournament, every touch, trying to work out whether United have found the next superstar or bought the next mistake. And that is dangerous, because Eduardo Conceição cannot be signed like a savior. He has to be signed like a project. There is a massive difference. If United buy him, they are not buying a player for next season. They are buying a player for 2028 and beyond. By then, the squad could look different. The manager could be different. The tactical system could be different. Even the problem United are trying to solve could be different. So the club must know exactly what they are buying. Are they buying a left winger, a number 10, a second striker, a flexible attacker who can float across the front line? Or are they simply buying the fear that City or Barcelona might turn him into a superstar? That is the line United cannot cross. Because the best clubs do not just collect Wonderkids, they build environments where Wonderkids become players. That means minutes at the right time, loans at the right time, coaching at the right time, protection from the noise, and a pathway that does not change every 6 months because the club panicked after 3 bad results. That is why this deal is so fascinating. Because Eduardo Conceição looks like the kind of talent United should be watching, maybe even chasing. But the price means they cannot treat this like a normal development signing. At £1 million, you can take a swing. At £750,000, you can take a swing. Even at £10 million, you can explain the upside. But around £34 million for a player who cannot join until 2028, that is no longer just scouting. That is conviction. And if United have that conviction, they need to show the plan behind it. So what should United actually do? For me, they should stay in the race. Not because Eduardo Conceição is guaranteed to become a superstar. Nobody can honestly say that about a 16-year-old who has not played regular senior football. But United cannot keep pretending this market does not exist. The best clubs are not waiting for certainty anymore. They are buying the signs, the movement, the technique, the mentality, the profile, the academy background. And if United truly believe Eduardo is one of those rare talents, then walking away just because the deal feels uncomfortable today could be a mistake. But there has to be discipline. £34 million only makes sense if the structure protects United. Lower upfront fee, smart add-ons, a sell-on arrangement Palmeiras can accept, and most importantly, a clear development plan before he even signs. Because United should not buy him out of fear. Not fear of City, not fear of Barcelona, not fear of missing the next Neymar. They should only buy him if they genuinely believe the player fits the future they are building. That is the difference. Eduardo Conceição might be worth the risk, but only if United are buying the player, not the panic. So let me know what you think. Would you pay around £34 million now for a 16-year-old who cannot arrive until 2028? Or would you walk away and trust United's new recruitment model to find the next one?